Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking on a pretty wild idea. We're looking at transforming a real off-road icon.
Yeah, something you don't usually see turned into a home on wheels.
Exactly. Our sources are excerpts from this Hummer H3 caravan conversion project guide. It's full of tech specs, diagrams, and crucially, the legal stuff.
Right, the hurdles you need to jump through.
So our mission today is really to unpack this. What does it actually take? Can you realistically turn an H3 into a functional caravan? From the nuts and bolts right up to the paperwork.
It's fascinating because the H3, everyone knows the look, the off-road capability. It actually provides a surprisingly strong base, a really solid foundation for this kind of project.
Okay, let's dig into that. The guide gives us the standard specs, right? For the 06 to 10 models.
Yep.
We're talking those 5-cylinder engines or the big 5.3-liter V8. Full-time 4x4, obviously. Around, 240 to 300 horsepower? And a payload that's, over half a ton, like 550, 600 kilos.
That payload is key. And physically, it's about 4.75 meters long, just under 2 meters wide and tall.
But the inside height, that's the immediate sticking point, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's tight, maybe 1.1, 1.2 meters max. Not exactly stand-up room.
Yeah.
And the total luggage space, even with seats down, is only about 1,600 liters.
So what does this mean for a conversion? The sources obviously see potential. What are the big pros they list?
Well, the powerful engine options, like you said, that super robust chassis, it's built tough.
Right.
High ground clearance, which is great if you actually want to use it off-road as a camper.
Yeah, take it places other campers can't go.
Exactly. And the rear end is quite flat, relatively speaking, which helps when adding extensions. Plus, parts are apparently still findable.
Okay, so it's got the bones for adventure, but the challenges, besides that low roof.
Well, the interior width is still narrower than, say, a standard minivan, which are often used for conversions.
Okay.
Fuel consumption. It's thirsty, really thirsty, like 14 to 16 liters per 100 kilometers average. And that rear door, the tailgate, it's asymmetrical, swings sideways.
Yeah.
That complicates building anything integrated onto the back.
Right, you have to design around it. So this is where it gets interesting. How do the guides suggest actually creating living space, overcoming those cramped dimensions?
This is the clever bit. It's about adding volume. Two main ways. A big roof raise and a rear module.
A roof raise, how much are we talking?
Like 0.8 to 1.1 meters higher. That gets you up to around 1.9 meters inside.
Okay, suddenly you can stand up. That's a game changer.
Huge difference. And then you add the rear module, basically extending the body backwards.
How far back?
Maybe 2.5, even 3 meters.
Whoa.
Combine those two. You go from that tiny original interior volume under 2 cubic meters
Yeah.
to something like 15 cubic meters total.
15, that's massive. Enough for a proper setup.
Oh yeah, bed, kitchen unit, maybe small seating area, a real usable space.
Okay, connecting this to the legal side. How does something that modified fare on U.S. roads? The laws must be tricky.
Actually, U.S. highway laws for motor caravans are pretty generous, surprisingly.
Really?
Yeah. Width-wise, the H3 is fine, well under the limit.
Yeah.
Length, even with the 3-meter rear module, you're still way under the maximum allowed.
What about height with the roof raise?
That's the main thing to watch. Got to stay under 4.11 meters, about 13 and a half feet. But the H3 with a typical raise should be okay.
And then you have state-specific stuff, right? Like California or Texas needing actual motorhome features.
Exactly. To get registered as a motorhome, which helps with insurance and stuff, you usually need certain things permanently installed.
Right.
A permanent bed, a sink with running water, some kind of cooking appliance.
Right.
Basic living amenities.
Gotcha. But the source material pushes it even further, doesn't it? It talks about like a dual-axle conversion.
Yeah, that's where it goes from conversion to major engineering project, adding a second axle at the back.
Why would you do that? Just for stability?
Stability, yes, but mainly carrying capacity. It lets you build a much bigger, heavier living module on the back without overloading the original chassis.
Okay. And then adding an alcove, that's the bit over the cab, right?
Yep, the overcab sleeping area. That adds another maybe almost 3 cubic meters just for sleeping space.
So with a dual axle and an alcove, what's the total potential volume then?
The estimate in the guide pushes it up to around 21 cubic meters.
21. That's practically a small apartment on wheels.
It's a serious build. But legally, that's another level too.
Yeah. How do you get that road legal in the U.S.?
It generally means getting it reclassified, usually as a reconstructed vehicle or maybe a custom motorhome.
Sounds complicated.
It involves engineering reports, proving it meets federal safety standards, FMVSS, state inspections. It's a process.
Might even need a whole new VIN number.
Potentially, yeah, a state-assigned VIN. the key takeaway from the source is it can be done. It can be made legal for U.S. roads, even with those extreme mods.
And then, just as a contrast, the guide mentions trying this in Turkey.
Yeah, and it paints a very different picture. Describes it as quite difficult, basically almost impossible to get approved for road use there.
Why is that?
Just much stricter regulations, tougher approval processes for modifications that extensive. You might end up with something you can only tow or just use as an off-road showpiece. Big difference.
So, wrapping this up, what's the big picture for someone listening? Is this Hummer Caravan dream feasible?
It's definitely feasible, especially in the U.S. context. But it's a massive project. Huge. Requires serious skill, budget, and navigating that legal side carefully.
But the result, potentially an incredibly unique, capable adventure vehicle.
Absolutely. The source even mentions the appeal of creating this kind of crazy American caravan, something that would totally stand out, get noticed.
That I built this factor must be huge.
Oh, sure.
So this deep dive really shows, I think, that if you've got the vision, the engineering chops, and understand the rules, you really can turn a beast like the H3 into a pretty bespoke home on wheels. It's kind of amazing, that blend of ruggedness and domesticity.
Vision meets practicality, yeah.
Yeah.
Pushing the boundaries of what a vehicle can be.